let me ask you this. What's a game recently released that you played and thought, yeah, this is actually really fun? Games drop almost every week now, but lately, it's the indie and AA games doing the heavy lifting. Sure, we all love a big AAA title with shiny polish, but let's be real, a lot of the studios just aren't delivering. Broken launches, rushed ideas, and straight up half-ass releases have become way too common. But wait, the good part is that the indie and AA games don't play around. They've been carrying the industry lately, so in this video we are diving into some of the best recently released indie and AA gems. So let's go. So the first game I want to talk about is Evil West. This game is pretty unique and well, it mixes up cowboys with vampires in a really fun way. You play as a guy named Jesse Rentier, and he's a vampire hunter who works for a secret group that protects the Wild West from monsters. The story is pretty simple, but it's very exciting because you just go from one place to another, fighting bad guys and saving the world. Now, talking about the gameplay, the best part of this game is just the raw fighting itself. You have a big metal glove called the Gauntlet that shoots electricity. You can punch vampires right in the face and watch them fly across the room. It feels really powerful when you hit them, and you can also have a bunch of guns like revolver and a rifle and a shotgun. You can mix up shooting and punching to make cool combos. There's even a flamethrower you can use to burn the monsters. Basically, the weapon variety is really good. Also, the graphics look great and the monsters are insanely scary and gross. Some of them are huge bats and some are just ugly, shitty ass looking vampire monsters that scream at you. The game has a lot of gore, so it's very messy when you win a fight. You can upgrade your weapons, your glove to get stronger as you play, and for example, you can make your punches electric so they shock everyone nearby. You can also play the game with a friend. It has a co-op mode where two people can fight the vampires together. This makes the game even more chaotic and fun because you can help each other out, talk, and just take out as many enemies as you can. It also feels like just a good old school video game from back in the day where fun was the most important thing. If you like Wild West vibe, cowboys, vampires, then this game is definitely a must play.
A Plague Tale Requiem is not trying to be fun in the normal way. It's a heavy story game that follows two siblings, Amicia and Hugo, in a medieval world that feels sick and cruel. This is a sequel, and it assumes you already know these characters, which makes everything hit harder. Hugo is not just a kid with problems, he is the reason entire cities collapse. The rats are not a monster you fight once, they're a curse that follows him everywhere. Wherever these two go, things slowly fall apart. What makes this game different is how personal it feels. You are not saving the world. You are trying to delay the worst outcome for as long as possible. Amicia is tired, angry, scared, and slowly losing herself as the game goes on. You can hear it in her voice, see it in how violent she becomes. The game does not pretend she is a hero. It shows what happens when a normal person is pushed too far and has no good choices left. The gameplay is built around being weak and outnumbered. You do not run in and fight groups head-on. You hide, you plan, and you use tools to control space. Light matters because rats fear it. Fire matters because it is the only thing that keeps death away. Your sling is not a power fantasy weapon. It is a desperate tool. You craft ammo, break armor, blind enemies, and sometimes you just run because that is all you can do. Combat feels messy and stressful on purpose, which fits the story. One of the most impressive things is how the rats work. They are not just a visual effect, they move like a living ocean, reacting to sound, light, and fire in real time. Entire areas become puzzles built around managing darkness and safety. You are constantly thinking about where you can stand without dying. It creates tension without needing jump scares or cheap tricks. The world itself is grounded in a twisted version of real history. The plague, religious fear, and blind faith all play a role. People see Hugo as a miracle or a demon depending on what they need to believe. Towns feel desperate, soldiers feel cruel, and nobody feels clean or safe. The game takes its time showing quiet moments too, which makes the violent parts hit harder. Requiem stands out because it commits fully to its tone. It is slow, uncomfortable, and emotional, and it never backs away from that. The voice acting is raw, the animation sells every breakdown, and the ending does not try to make you feel good. If you care about strong characters, serious storytelling, and a game that treats its story with respect, this is one of the best recent AA story games out there. You have to listen to me about this game because it is honestly one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen on a screen. It is called Kena Bridge of Spirits, and it looks exactly like a Pixar movie that you can actually control. You play as a girl named Kena, and she is a spirit guide, which means she helps ghosts who are stuck in the world move on to the afterlife. It is a little bit sad, but mostly it is just really sweet and exciting. The whole game takes place in this big abandoned village that is surrounded by a forest. Something bad happened there a long time ago, and now the whole place is covered in this gross red and black corruption. Kena has to go to different parts of the forest to find spirits who are lost. These spirits are usually people who have a lot of guilt or anger, and they turned into big scary monsters because they could not let go of their past. You have to learn about their lives and what happened to them so you can help them find peace. It is a really good story about helping people and fixing mistakes. Okay, so the absolute best part of this game is these little black fuzzy creatures called the Rot. They are these tiny round monsters with big eyes, and they are so cute that you will want to scream. You start with just a few of them, but as you play, you find more and more hiding under rocks and inside chests until you have a whole army of them following you around. You can even find little hats for them to wear, like mushroom caps or fox masks or even little pancakes. It is adorable. But the Rot are not just for looking cute, because they actually help you do everything. When you are walking around, they can pick up heavy statues for you or move blocks so you can climb up cliffs. They're like your little helpers, and they chirp and make funny noises the whole time. You might think this game is easy because it looks like a cartoon, but the fighting is actually pretty tough. Kena has a big wooden staff that she uses to whack enemies. You can do light hits and heavy hits, and you also have a blue bubble shield to block attacks. Later on, you get really cool powers like turning your staff into a magic bow and arrow or using it to throw spirit bombs that blow up the bad guys. The Rot help you fight too. You can tell them to swarm a monster to distract it so you can hit it from behind. You can also use them to make a giant spirit hammer or a super powerful arrow. The boss fights are really intense, and you have to be fast and smart to win. It feels so good when you finally beat a huge boss and turn them back into a peaceful spirit. This next game is called Lies of P, and it is a complete twist on a story you probably already know, Pinocchio, but this is not the cute Disney cartoon version at all. This game is dark and scary and really difficult to play. You play as Pinocchio himself, who is actually a puppet robot, and you wake up in this huge city called Krat. Krat was once a beautiful place like Paris, but now everything is ruined because all the other robots and puppets in the city went completely crazy and started killing everyone. Your goal is to find your creator, Geppetto, and try to stop this whole mess. The world of Lies of P looks like something out of a creepy old painting. Everything is dusty and foggy, and there are these huge gothic buildings everywhere. You spend a lot of time walking through dark streets and sewers and abandoned opera houses, and it is a very dangerous place to be. You have to be super careful because every corner is hiding a scary robot or a giant puppet monster just waiting to smash you into pieces. The atmosphere is thick and heavy, which makes it feel really tense every time you step into a new area. The main thing about this game is the fighting, and I have to warn you, it is seriously tough. You have to learn how to block and dodge attacks perfectly, or you will die very quickly. You use all sorts of crazy weapons that are made up of two parts, a handle and a blade. You can mix and match these parts to make your own custom weapon. For example, you can put a big heavy axe head on a quick sword handle and see how that works. This lets you play around with different fighting styles. Pinocchio's left arm is also special because it can be switched out for different tools like a flamethrower or a giant harpoon that pulls enemies closer to you. It is called the Legion arm, and it is very useful for getting out of tight spots. The whole concept of lying is a big deal in the game too. As Pinocchio, you get choices to either tell the truth or to lie to the people you meet. These choices actually change the story, and they affect what kind of puppet Pinocchio becomes. The more you lie, the more human he becomes, which is a really cool and unique idea for a game. If you like a challenge and you like games that make you feel like you really earned your victory against a huge, scary boss, then Lies of P is a game you absolutely must try. It is a fantastic game with a very dark style and a lot of depth to the combat. Remnant 2 is basically what happens when you take a Souls-style game and strip out the artsy nonsense, then mix it with guns, co-op chaos, and real build freedom. The world is broken, strange, and stitched together from different realities, and the game does not stop to explain everything in long cutscenes. You wake up, things are already bad, and you are thrown into hostile worlds where nothing wants you alive. The biggest thing that makes Remnant 2 stand out is how different every playthrough can be. Maps are semi-random, bosses change, side stories shift, and even major events can play out in totally different ways. Two people can play the same world and see different bosses, different endings, and different rewards. That alone makes it feel less like a one-and-done game and more like something you keep coming back to. Combat is where the game really shines. This is not just a shooter, and it is not just a Souls game either. You aim, dodge, manage stamina, and read enemy patterns at the same time. Enemies hit hard, healing is limited, and mistakes are punished. Guns feel heavy and useful, not like backup weapons. Melee exists, but most fights are about positioning, timing, and staying calm when everything is going wrong. The class system, called archetypes, is deep without being annoying. You pick a main role like handler, medic, challenger, or gunslinger, and later you can mix two together to create your own playstyle. You can build a tank that never goes down, a support that keeps the team alive, or a damage monster that melts bosses fast. Gear actually matters, and small changes can completely change how the game feels. The worlds themselves are weird in a good way. One area feels like a dying fantasy kingdom, another like a sci-fi nightmare, another like a swamp filled with decay and madness. The lore is there if you care, but the game never forces it on you. You learn the world by fighting through it, listening to NPCs, and seeing how messed up everything has become. Remnant 2 also works great in co-op. Playing with friends turns tough fights into controlled chaos, but the difficulty stays fair. Bosses do not become pushovers, and teamwork actually matters. At the same time, the game is fully playable solo, which is rare for this kind of design. This is not a cinematic story game, but it does something many big games fail at. It respects the player's time, trusts them to learn, and rewards skill instead of handholding. If you want a recent AA game with deep combat, replay value, and no filler, Remnant 2 is one of the strongest releases in its space. Dispatch is one of those games that feels like a weird, funny TV show you play instead of just watch, and it's been a surprise hit in 2025. It was made and published by Ad Hoc Studio, a small team built by people who used to work on Telltale game stuff back in the day. That old Telltale vibe where choice and dialogue matter more than twitch reflexes is baked right into how Dispatch works and feels. The game dropped in October 2025 in a weird but cool way. Instead of releasing the whole thing at once, 8 episodes came out over a few weeks, kind of like a TV series you wait on each week. By November 12, 2025, all episodes were available, and that means you can now jump into the full story from start to finish. In Dispatch, you play Robert Robertson III, also known as the washed-up hero Mecha Man. His giant mech suit got wrecked, his reputation is in rough shape, and now he has to work at the Superhero Dispatch Network, SDN, which is basically a superhero office where you send other powered people out on missions instead of being the one in the field yourself. Robert isn't just giving orders though, he's dealing with his own sense of purpose while managing a chaotic team of misfits, including reformed villains and quirky personalities. The story leans really hard into comedy and character work. It's not this somber moral epic with deep lectures about good and evil, it's more about office drama in a world full of superpowers, where choices you make in conversations actually shape how characters feel about each other and how things unfold. People talk, you respond, and sometimes what you say changes later scenes in subtle or big ways. The dialogue has real energy partly because of the voice cast, which includes Aaron Paul, Jeffrey Wright, Laura Bailey, Moist Critical, Jacksepticeye, and others who bring the characters to life in a way the writing alone doesn't always do on its own. Gameplay isn't about fighting and shooting. You spend most of your time looking at the SDN map, deciding which heroes to send to what crisis, trying to match their strengths, weaknesses, personalities, and cooldowns to the job at hand. It's like a light strategy game smashed into a narrative adventure. There are also hacking minigames and occasional quick time events to break up the conversation sequences and dispatch decisions, but it's never about crazy action. If you're looking for an absolute must-play role-playing game that just hit the market, you need to stop scrolling and check out Clair Obscur Expedition 33. This game is the phenomenal debut title from Sandfall Games, and it immediately sets a new bar for how stunning a turn-based role-playing game can look. The entire project is visually jaw-dropping because the developers decided to render everything using a style inspired by 19th century French Romanticism and Impressionism. This means the world is unbelievably beautiful, lush, soft, and vibrant, looking like a living painting, which creates this incredible, eerie contrast with the desperate apocalyptic story. The whole premise is immediately gripping and deeply tragic. The world is facing a slow, agonizing end thanks to a powerful villain called the Paintress. Her power is horrifyingly simple. Every year on her birthday, she appears and magically subtracts 1 year of age from every single person on the planet. Your group, the titular Expedition 33, are the final desperate attempt to find and stop her before the entire human race hits age 0 and simply fades away. That ticking clock hanging over the world gives every single mission and conversation a real, palpable sense of urgency that you don't often get in these kinds of games. Now, let's get into the mechanics, because the combat is the reason this game is blowing up right now. It takes the classic turn-based system and amps up the adrenaline. It's an active turn-based system that absolutely demands your attention and skill. You aren't just selecting options from a menu and sitting back. Whenever an enemy attacks one of your 4 party members, a small QuickTime prompt appears on the screen, and you have to hit the correct button or direction at the exact moment of impact to successfully parry, block, or dodge the blow. Nailing the timing is critical, because a perfect parry can drastically reduce damage and give you an immediate counterattack chance. The same timing-based inputs apply to your offensive moves. To maximize the damage or trigger the powerful secondary effects of your abilities, you often have to hit a sequence of buttons or hold a press in a specific rhythm. This means every battle, from minor skirmishes to the gigantic multi-stage boss fights, which are visually spectacular by the way, is a highly engaging test of reflexes and rhythm. You are constantly managing your party's unique skill trees, making sure their equipment is optimized, and mastering the timing of the parry system. It's a game that respects both the strategic depth of traditional role-playing games and the skill-based satisfaction of an action title, making it a powerful experience that feels genuinely new in the current gaming landscape. Hades 2 is the sequel to one of the most talked about indie games of the last decade, Hades, and it finally hit its full release on September 25th, 2025, after a long period in early access. This is a big deal because Supergiant games almost never make sequels. Before this, they were known for Bastion, Transistor, Pyre, and the first Hades, all of which were standalone titles that never got follow-ups. So seeing them tackle a true sequel with everything expanded and polished feels like a milestone for smaller studios doing big ideas. Right from the start, Hades 2 feels familiar but different in all the right ways. You are no longer Zagreus, the guy from the first game. Now you play Melinoe, the princess of the underworld and sister of Zagreus, and she's on a mission to take down Kronos, the titan of time. That already sets the tone. This isn't just another run through the same underworld. It's a deeper mythic journey with higher stakes and a world that keeps spreading out the more you play. The game is a roguelike action RPG, which means almost every run you do through the world is different, but your experience and upgrades carry forward in ways that make each attempt feel meaningful. Melinoe can pick up all kinds of weapons, spells, and abilities, and each playthrough you mix and match them in new ways. You'll get powers from the Olympian gods, but this time there's magic and witchcraft built right into combat, letting you bend the battlefield in ways the first game never did. The combat stays super fast and fluid. You hit enemies, dodge attacks, dash around danger, and build up really chaotic combinations that can explode into insane moments. But what's cool is that the combat never feels random. The weapons all feel different, and the synergy between spell and sword is much deeper than the first game. You feel like you're crafting your own playstyle more than just grinding the same build over and over. The world itself is bigger too. The first Hades kept you mostly underground, moving up, but Hades 2 sends you across new biomes, including places on the surface and mythic regions tied to gods and monsters that we've only heard about before. There's a clear sense of progression, but not in a boring linear way. You explore, get knocked down, build back up, and start seeing how all these areas connect, both in gameplay and story. One of the most talked about things with the sequel is how much more voice work and story content there is. It's crazy massive, way bigger than the first game in terms of dialogue and characters you can meet. Tons of gods, ghosts, and monsters are fully voiced, and they react differently depending on how your runs go. That means the world feels fuller and more alive than just enemies to kill. This game grew through early access in a way that few sequels do. Supergiant actually listened to community feedback for well over a year, shaping everything from boss fights to balance to how the boons, the power boosts you get, work. They even reworked some fan-favorite abilities so the game felt tighter and more cohesive, instead of just throwing things in and hoping they stick. And people are really playing it. On Steam, the player numbers actually doubled the peak of the first Hades when the full version launched, which is wild for a sequel like this. Players praise the mix of deep combat, replayability, and mythic world building, while critics have been calling it one of the best sequels of the year. If you know the original Hades, you'll feel at home here, but you'll also notice how much bigger the world is, how much deeper the systems go, and how much both story and mechanics have grown. It stands on its own even if you never touched the first game. Sifu came out at a time when a lot of action games were getting easier, safer, and more forgiving, and this game did the exact opposite. It was made by Slowclap, the same studio that made Absolver, and you can tell this is a team obsessed with hand-to-hand combat. They're not trying to impress you with size or flashy set pieces. They are focused on feel, timing, and mastery. Sifu is built around the idea that getting good is the whole point. The story is simple on the surface. You're a martial artist going after 5 targets who destroyed your school and killed your family. There's no open world, no side quests, no filler. Each level represents a step in that revenge path, and each boss represents a different fighting philosophy. The game does not dump lore on you. It lets the environment, the dialogue, and the bosses do the talking. As you replay levels, you slowly realize this story is not just about revenge, it is about obsession and whether holding on to anger is actually worth the cost. The aging system is the core idea that makes Sifu stand out. Every death pushes your character forward in age. You get stronger but more fragile, which is a smart trade-off. It means brute-forcing fights will only take you so far. You start caring about clean runs, not just survival. By the time you reach your 30s or 40s in a level, you feel the pressure. One bad room can end an entire run. That tension never goes away, even when you get better. Combat is where Sifu separates itself from almost everything else. This is not a button masher, and it is not trying to be cinematic. You are constantly managing structure, spacing, and enemy behavior. Dodging at the right angle matters more than mashing block. Enemies do not politely take turns, and group fights are where most players hit a wall. You're forced to control crowds, use the environment, and stay aware of everything happening around you. When the system clicks, fights flow in a way that feels smooth and controlled, almost like choreography. The level design supports this idea of mastery. You replay the same stages many times, but they never feel boring because you are the one changing, not the level. Shortcuts unlock, routes become faster, and rooms that once destroyed you turn into clean, efficient runs. The game respects repetition and assumes you are willing to learn, which is rare now. Visually, Sifu goes for a stylized look that ages well. It isn't chase realism. The lighting, colors, and animations are clean and intentional. The martial arts animations are especially strong. You can tell Slowclap studied real movement. Hits feel grounded, not floaty, and enemy reactions sell every punch. Sifu fits into this modern wave of smaller studios making tight, focused games instead of bloated ones. It doesn't waste your time, but it demands your attention. By the end, the game feels less like something you beat and more like something you trained for. If you care about skill-based combat, clean design, and games that trust the player to improve, Sifu is one of the best examples of that philosophy in recent years. RoboCop Rogue City. This game is pure fan service done right, and it's the best adaptation of the original movie vibe that anyone could have asked for. It comes from Teon, the same developers who did the Terminator Resistance game, and they have this amazing knack for taking classic 80s action movies and translating their specific, gritty, ultra-violent atmosphere perfectly into a modern first-person shooter. The story is set between the second and third RoboCop movies, so it feels like a genuine lost chapter of the original trilogy. You are, obviously, Alex Murphy, the legendary cyborg lawman, and the game throws you right back into the crime-ridden streets of old Detroit. The big threat this time is a mysterious new crime lord known only as the New Guy, who is trying to unite the city's gangs. The plot deals with all the classic RoboCop themes: Murphy's slowly returning humanity, the corporate greed of omni-consumer products, OCP, and the sheer satirical absurdity of late 80s action media. What makes this game so damn satisfying is the gameplay. This is not a fast, twitchy shooter. You are playing as a 600-pound walking tank, and the game makes you feel that weight and power. RoboCop moves slowly, deliberately, and with an unstoppable momentum. When you draw your iconic Auto 9 pistol, it feels incredibly powerful and precise. You don't take cover, you are the cover. You can walk through walls, kick thugs across the room, and even use your environment, like grabbing a filing cabinet or an explosive barrel, and throwing it right through a gange of enemies. It is supremely brutal and incredibly fun. The level design is fantastic because it's not all just shooting. You get to engage in detective work too. As RoboCop, you have to investigate crime scenes using your internal vision modes, gather evidence, and talk to witnesses and victims. This is where the light RPG elements come in. You gain experience and spend skill points on things like deduction to solve cases faster, combat to increase your damage, or even psychology to navigate the complex, often darkly funny dialogue choices. Your choices matter too. How you interact with the public and how you handle certain situations actually affects your reputation and your standing as a cop, which impacts the ending. It's a perfect blend of slow burn detective work, crunchy heavy combat, and genuinely faithful storytelling that captures the exact tone of the first 2 films. Hi-Fi Rush is one of those games that shouldn't exist the way it does, and that's part of what makes it so interesting. It released back in January 2023 on Xbox and PC, and later came to PlayStation in March 2024, but people are still talking about it because it's one of those rare games that actually mixes two things you don't usually see together, rhythm and action combat, and makes both feel meaningful, not just gimmicky. The game was made by Tango Gameworks, the same folks who made The Evil Within and Ghostwire Tokyo. Those games were always about tension, horror, or big environments with weird enemies. Hi-Fi Rush feels like they threw that whole vibe out the window and decided to make something lighter, louder, and just plain fun. Honestly, it feels like the team just said, what if we made a game that feels like a music video and a beat-em-up had a baby and then actually pulled it off? You play as Chai, who starts off as this goofy up-and-coming rock musician who just can't catch a break. He gets pulled into this corporate experiment where a music player gets physically fused to his chest, like it becomes part of him, and suddenly the whole world around him starts moving to the beat of that music. That is the entire gag of the game, and it works because the combat, enemy movement, hazards, and almost everything in the world actually sync up with your soundtrack. If you time your hits to the rhythm, things feel good. If you don't, attacks still land, but it doesn't feel as satisfying. It's weirdly intuitive once you get into the flow. Mechanically, it's a third-person combat game, but rhythm isn't some tiny side thing. It's woven into how you win fights. Enemies move and attack on beat, so once you start noticing the rhythm patterns, the combat feels almost like playing a beat-matching game and a fighting game at the same time. You get combos, special moves, and finishers that hit harder when you're on time, that encourages you to listen to the music instead of just ignoring it while button mashing. You unlock new gear, new musical tracks, and new abilities that change how fights feel over time, so it doesn't just stay the same from start to finish. The characters you meet are a big part of why people remember this game. Chai gathers this odd crew of allies. Each one has their own personality and weird little animations that make you smile. That's something Tango has always been good at, giving characters real flavor without trying to be too deep. It's not about drama or tragedy, it's about a ragtag band of misfits figuring things out and having fun doing it. And the story is playful. It's not some long epic with million-dollar cutscenes. It's loose and funny, poking fun at corporate culture, at hero tropes, and at itself. The humor is light without being stupid, and that tone carries through the whole adventure. There's also a weird history behind the game's existence that makes it even cooler. When Hi-Fi Rush launched, it got great reactions from players and critics, but pretty soon after, Microsoft announced Tango was being shut down. That freaked people out because this game was one of the few recent action titles that felt fresh. Then, Krafton bought the studio and the Hi-Fi Rush rights, basically saving the team and keeping the game alive. That means the weird, joyful thing you play now exists because of a real drama behind the scenes, not just corporate press releases. A lot of people point out that the gameplay loop can feel a bit short once you've beaten the story, and some tracks don't stick in your head as much as others, but that's about the only real complaint anyone has. The combat, the rhythm syncing, the funny story, and how the world actually reacts to music is something you rarely see done this well. Eriksholm: The Stolen Dream is a 2025 story-driven stealth adventure that feels like a grown-up indie tale with some old-school vibes wrapped around clever stealth and puzzle play. It was made by River End Games, a small Swedish studio with veterans from big projects like Battlefield, Little Nightmares, Mirror's Edge, and Unravel, which is wild when you think about it because this game blends cinematic storytelling with tight, thoughtful stealth design in a way that you don't see a ton these days. The game dropped on July 15th, 2025 for PS5, Xbox Series S and S, and PC, and it's one of those titles that quietly build hype through demos and trailers before people even knew how good it really was. You play mostly in an isometric view, which means you're seeing everything from a kind of top-down angle that lets you look at guards, pathways, and puzzles in the world like you're scoping out a tabletop map, except it's not cute or simplistic, it's detailed, moody, and a bit gritty. The story starts super personal and grounded. You're introduced to Hanna, a young orphan in the city of Eriksholm whose brother Herman disappears after things go sideways with something he did. The city is already in decline because of a plague called heartpox, and that backdrop gives the whole narrative this industrial-era fear mixed with desperation feel. It's not about saving a kingdom, it's about pulling yourself and the people you care about out of a mess that's bigger than you. Gameplay is rooted in stealth and strategy, but it's not just hide forever stealth. You're constantly moving through levels where guards patrol, paths wind, and every corner could have a secret or a danger. If someone spots you, it resets you to just before detection, so it rewards patience and pattern reading more than just brute force. You don't have guns or magic, you use shadows, timing, and your wits. That sense of tension actually makes encounters matter, even if the game isn't trying to be super hardcore. Pretty early on, the game expands the cast. After playing as Hana for a while, you unlock 2 more characters, Alva and Sebastian, and each of them brings a new way of moving and solving problems. Hana can squeeze through vents, Alva climbs drain pipes, and Sebastian can swim. Once all 3 are unlocked, you can switch between them on the fly to solve objectives in different ways, which feels smart because it opens up multiple paths through the same level. It stops the stealth from feeling linear and puts a bit more strategy back in your hands. The city of Eriksholm itself is inspired by early 20th century Scandinavian architecture. Think Nordic streets, industrial neighborhoods, cramped residential areas, and that setting really becomes a character in its own right. The visuals are crisp, the lighting and details pop thanks to Unreal Engine 5, and there's a real sense of place even if the levels are on rails compared to some big open worlds. Still wakes the deep if you have an appreciation for games that build tension through atmosphere and environment rather than constant shooting. This is a game from the Chinese Room, and if you know their work, you know they are the masters of narrative-focused games that lean heavily into atmosphere, like Dear Esther and Everybody's Gone to the Rapture. This time, they are tackling pure, claustrophobic survival horror, and it's a total head trip. The game is set in 1975, and you play as a guy named Kaz McLeary, who's working as an electrician on a giant, remote, and increasingly unstable oil rig called the Barra D. The setting alone is terrifying. You are miles out in the North Sea, surrounded by freezing black water, completely cut off from the mainland. Then things go catastrophically wrong. The rig is hit by some kind of impossible, non-Euclidean horror, a creature or an influence that comes from the deep ocean and starts twisting the steel structure and the sanity of the crew. The unique terror of this game is that you have absolutely no way to fight back. This is not a combat game. Your only options are to survive, run, hide, and observe the terrifying collapse of your world. You spend the entire game navigating the labyrinthian, tight, and twisting corridors of the oil rig. You're crawling through maintenance ducts, shimmying along narrow catwalks suspended over the crashing waves, and swimming through flooded sections where the oxygen is running out. The environment itself is your enemy just as much as whatever monstrous thing is stalking the halls. The brilliance of the Chinese Room's approach is how human and raw the story is. Kaz is just a regular guy, not some super soldier, and he's dealing with immense stress and fear. The voice acting is outstanding, delivered in strong Scottish and regional accents, which grounds the whole terrifying experience in a very real, relatable crew dynamic. You are constantly hearing the shouts and screams of your crewmates over the crockling radio, and you see the horrible things happening to them, but you can do nothing but try to save yourself and perhaps a few others. If you love games that use sound design, tight spaces, and a deep character-driven story to generate genuine, paralyzing fear, then Still Wakes the Deep is a perfect example of modern, high-quality psychological horror. Pentiment is a very different kind of game, and it comes from Obsidian, a studio that has been around forever and is known for deep writing and choice-driven games. Instead of going big and cinematic, they went small, slow, and very focused. This game is set in 16th century Bavaria, during a time when religion, class, and power controlled every part of life. You play as Andreas Mahler, an artist working on manuscripts, not a warrior, not a hero, just a smart guy who knows how to read, write, and observe people. What makes Pentiment stand out right away is the art style. The whole game looks like a living medieval manuscript. Text appears as if it is being handwritten in real time, characters look like drawings from old books, and the world feels like history come to life. This is not just a style choice, it fits the game perfectly. You feel like you are inside a history book, watching real people deal with real problems. The game is built around mystery and choice. Murders happen, secrets come out, and you are constantly asked to decide who to trust and what version of the truth you believe. The key thing is that you are never given perfect answers. Evidence can be incomplete, witnesses can lie or be wrong. Time moves forward no matter what you do, and some choices lock you out of others. You cannot see everything in one playthrough, and the game is very honest about that. There is no combat at all. Everything is handled through dialogue, investigation, and decision-making. Who Andreas is depends on how you shape him. His background, education, and interests affect how he talks to people and what options you get. Being kind or aggressive, curious or dismissive, all of it changes how characters react to you over the years. And yes, years matter here. The game spans decades, and you see characters age, change, regret things, and carry old wounds. What Pentiment does really well is show how class and power work. Peasants, monks, nobles, and outsiders all live in the same town, but they live very different lives. The game never lectures you, it just shows you how unfair things are and lets you sit with it. Some choices feel wrong no matter what you do, and the game does not try to comfort you. Pentiment came out in an era where most games chase action and speed, so this feels almost rebellious. It trusts the player to slow down, read, and think. The writing is sharp, the characters feel human, and the consequences stick. This is not a game you play for thrills. You play it because you want something thoughtful and mature. If you are tired of bloated open worlds and endless combat, Pentiment feels like a breath of fresh air. It proves that a game can be quiet, smart, and deeply engaging without explosions or boss fights. It's one of the most unique AA games of recent years, and nothing else really feels like it. Goodnight Universe is part of this newer wave of indie games that aren't trying to win you over with combat systems or big mechanics, but with perspective. It comes from Nice Dream, the same small team that made Before Your Eyes. And if you know that game, you already know what kind of space they operate in. They're not interested in power fantasies. They're interested in memory, family, identity, and how games can make you feel present in a moment instead of just watching it play out. You play as Isaac, a baby. Not a funny baby, not a cartoon baby, but an actual infant who can't talk, can't walk, and barely understands the world. That alone already sounds like a bad idea on paper, but the twist is that Isaac starts developing telekinetic and psychic abilities. The game is told entirely from his point of view, so everything feels low to the ground, oversized, confusing, and intimate in a way most games never even try. The story isn't about saving the world, it's about family. Isaac's parents are flawed, stressed, tired people. His older sister feels real, not written like a sitcom character. There's love in the house, but also tension, arguments, fear, and misunderstanding. On top of that, there's a tech company that becomes interested in Isaac's abilities, and that's where the game starts mixing personal family drama with something darker and more uncomfortable. It's not subtle in a fake way, but it also doesn't scream its themes at you. What really makes Goodnight Universe stand out is how you interact with it. Like Before Your Eyes, the game uses camera and face tracking if you want. Your eyes, your head movement, even your expressions can control things. You look at objects to move them. You focus your gaze to activate powers. Sometimes just looking at something for too long changes what happens. And the important part is that this isn't just a gimmick slapped on top. It actually fits the idea of being a baby, where your main way of interacting with the world is attention, not action. You're not pressing buttons to swing swords. You're paying attention. You're observing. You're reacting. And that changes how the pacing feels. The game forces you to slow down. If you try to rush it, it doesn't really work. It's designed around moments, not systems. From a design point of view, this is very much a narrative-first game, but it's smarter than most walking simulators. There are puzzles, light exploration, and moments where your powers grow and change how you interact with rooms and people. It never turns into an action game, and it doesn't want to. The tension comes from emotional stakes, not enemies. Visually, the game keeps things grounded. It's not flashy. The environments feel lived in. Messy rooms, toys on the floor, dim lighting at night, quiet moments where nothing happens except breathing and background noise. Sound design does a lot of heavy lifting here. You hear muffled voices, distant arguments, household sounds, and it all adds to that feeling of being small in a big world you don't fully understand yet. What's interesting is how this game fits into the current indie scene. We're seeing more studios explore perspective-based storytelling, where the mechanics exist mainly to reinforce how the story feels. Goodnight Universe sits right alongside games like Pentiment or The Altars in that sense. Very different genres, but the same mindset. Use the medium properly, do something that only games can do. Reception-wise, people who bounce off slow narrative games probably won't love this, and that's fine. This isn't trying to convert action fans, but for players who enjoy story-driven experiences that trust the audience to sit with uncomfortable emotions, Goodnight Universe lands hard. A lot of players talk about finishing it and just sitting there for a bit, not because of shock value, but because it feels personal in a quiet way. Road 96, the setup is simple but strong. You're a teenager in a fictional country called Petria, which is basically falling apart. The government's corrupt, people are angry, and the country is headed toward an election that feels dangerous instead of hopeful. Every character you play is trying to escape and reach the border, and the road to that border is the entire game. What's important is this: you don't play one hero, you play many different teams one after another. When one reaches the border or dies or gives up, the game jumps forward in time and you start again as someone else. That structure alone already makes Road 96 feel different. It's not about winning, it's about experiencing a country through broken pieces of people. Gameplay-wise, it's a mix of walking, dialogue choices, light puzzles, and small mini-games. There's no combat system, no skill trees, no loot grind. Your main tools are decisions and attitude. How you talk to people matters. Whether you're polite, angry, scared, selfish, or brave actually changes how scenes play out. Sometimes it helps you, sometimes it backfires. One of the coolest things about Road 96 is how randomized but intentional it feels. Each run pulls from a pool of scenes, characters, and events, but they're written in a way that slowly builds a bigger picture. You'll meet the same characters again and again across different teams, but in different situations and moods. Over time, you start understanding who they are, what they want, and how messed up the system around them really is. The characters are honestly the heart of the game. You've got truck drivers, rebels, weird conspiracy people, government supporters, and kids who just want to survive one more night. Some of them are funny, some annoying, some sad, some straight up dangerous. None of them feel perfect, and that's the point. The writing feels messy in a human way, not polished like a movie script. The political side of the game is always there, but it doesn't lecture you. You see propaganda posters, you hear arguments on the radio, you watch people disagree with each other in real time. The game lets you lean into rebellion, support the system, or stay neutral, and none of those paths are clean or heroic. It reflects how real political tension actually feels when you're young and powerless. Mechanically, Road 96 also does something smart by tying progress to the country, not the character. Skills like persuasion, hacking, or stamina carry across runs. That makes each teen feel fragile, but the overall journey feel meaningful. You're learning, adapting, and slowly understanding how to survive longer on the road. The music deserves its own mention. It's one of the reasons people remember this game. The soundtrack mixes road trip vibes, synth, indie, and moody tracks that perfectly fit the feeling of being alone at night with nowhere to go. A lot of scenes hit harder simply because of the music playing underneath them. Visually, the game doesn't aim for realism. It's stylized, slightly exaggerated, almost dreamlike at times. That works in its favor because Road 96 isn't trying to be a documentary. It's a feeling. Long roads, empty gas stations, cheap motels, police checkpoints, and quiet moments staring out into nothing. This game came out during a time when a lot of indie devs were experimenting with procedural storytelling, and Road 96 is one of the better examples of that idea done right. It's not perfectly balanced, and some scenes definitely hit harder than others. Some dialogue can feel on the nose. Some runs feel stronger than others, but that unevenness almost adds to the experience. Not every journey is supposed to feel the same. Road 96 isn't a power fantasy. You don't save the world. You don't fix the system. You just try to get through it. And somehow that makes it more honest than a lot of bigger games that pretend choice always leads to victory.